So I just want to mention a couple of things that can be very useful in the recovery and change process. And one of them is cognitive behavioral therapy, seeking a therapist, someone who specializes in addiction recovery or trauma recovery. Talking is very helpful and very meaningful, and developing a relationship so you don't feel like you're all alone is critical. And that's also someone that you can share your story with if you don't feel anyone else is safe. Professional counselors, and I'd encourage you to get someone that's a licensed professional counselor in your area, are mandated to maintain confidentiality. That's the only way that therapy really works. Confidentiality means that what you talk about in that sacred therapeutic hour stays there. It must stay there. So therapy can be very useful. And again, I mentioned briefly in the past something called EMDR, stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's one of the newer forms of therapy. Well, it's actually been around for a good while, but now it's finally been accepted as a best practice in trauma recovery, and it's very helpful in addiction recovery also. And it has to do with bilateral stimulation and eye movements with the fingers in front of a person's eyes as they're remembering trauma or dealing with their addiction. And there's been tremendous results from this type of activity. And it's just taken a long time for EMDR to be recognized because the speed with which people are getting better kind of frustrates the system. And this is just my own personal opinion that pharmaceutical companies may resist this form. There's a lot of pressure to resist it because what's happening is that people who engage in EMDR therapy are getting better quick. And so they're coming into therapists after 3 or 4 or 5 sessions, many, and saying, I don't think I need to be coming anymore. And again, the critical thing to understand about medications are critical in some aspects when we're dealing with severe addiction, anxiety, and other severe mental health issues. But I think medications are given out way too freely. And all medications do is cover the symptoms. They don't cure anything, right? And so it's not going to help do anything but alleviate the symptoms. And what we're after through this process and what Inner Gold is all about is finding the core, helping you find the core issues so you can make a lasting change as much as possible so you can move forward in your life. But if you've been taking medications, you work with your doctor. Do not listen to what I'm just saying and go completely off your medications. I'm not telling you to do that. And that would not be wise to do. But if you feel like you want to try that, work with your doctor and work on these concepts we're talking about. You know, if you want to get engaged in EMDR therapy, I'd encourage you to look at someone who is trained in the ability to do that. So also we've talked about yoga. I encourage you to find a trauma-sensitive yoga instructor if you're interested in doing that. Another thing that I love that I've worked with many clients with is essential oils. Essential oils are powerful in many aspects, and I know there's a lot of research behind it. And I don't have time to get into all that, but smell is only one of the things that essential oils do, but that hits the limbic system directly in a very, very powerful way. Some have even said that smell is extremely powerful and one of the first things the limbic system responds to. So when you're creating your future vision statement and you're starting to create new pathways in your brain, get some essential oils. And I would encourage you to get the ones that are certified top grade, not cheap ones bought in the grocery store. And then you associate a smell, for example, with your future vision statement. It's very powerful. And so if you ever find yourself triggered, you can have something where you can just go back to the smell and get you grounded. There's all sorts of different things. But anyway, that's for some other professionals to deal with. But I love essential oils, and I found them very useful for many individuals. Neurofeedback is another form of therapy that's very powerful in helping those with severe emotional problems and behavioral problems restructure their brain. So look into someone who's trained in neurofeedback. And then motivational interviewing is another form of therapy that's extremely powerful. Motivational interviewing is just a way, it's a strategy or a way of being with people that enhances the intrinsic motivation to change. So it's non-invasive, non-judgmental. And so you can ask a therapist, if you're going to get into therapy, ask them if they've been trained in motivational interviewing. It's a very powerful form that a therapist can use as a tool to help them, how to approach an individual. And then acceptance commitment theory, that's another thing that's weaved all through what we talk about here in the Inner Gold program and Inner Gold system. And it's basically centered on the concept of surrender, our third concept here, just learning to let thoughts and feelings be. And the objective is not to eliminate the difficult things in our lives. Rather, it is to be present with what life brings us and move toward valued behavior. So the premise of acceptance and commitment theory and therapy is, it's not about the alleviation of symptoms and problems. And we now know why they don't go away, because the limbic system is just going to do what it does. It's not the issue at all. It's what you are going to do with them. And now you have the tools and strategies to deal with them effectively. I strongly encourage you to read and reread Recovery Simplified. There is so much information in each line. And as we, mentioned in one of the quotes before by the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, where he said, "No man ever steps into the same river twice, for he's not the same man and it's not the same river." So every time you read a book, it's like you can be reading it for the first time, but just building on all the information that you already have. And it's the same thing with the assignments in the workbook. I encourage you to revisit them as often as needed, but at least on a consistent basis, whether it's monthly, quarterly, whatever works for you. But this is not just a one-time thing. So if you've watched these videos and gone through this, please revisit these things over and over again. Pop in a video, read the book, keep this process fresh in your mind, and you will continue to expand, grow, develop, and have more ideas come to you. And perhaps you'll write your own book or whatever you need to do to create your vision and whatever that will entail for you. And I know that it can come true.